The Mets bats stayed red hot. Clay Holmes delivered a quality start, and for the first time this season, the Mets have beaten the Braves in a series.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Now, the Mets have squared off against the Braves now 4 times this season. This is their final meeting against the Braves, and this is the first series that they've won. They started off the year 0-5 against the Braves, getting swept in Atlanta the first time that they saw them, and then there was a series not too long after that, a 4-game set, where they lost the first 2 games of that series. Since then, though, they're starting to play the Braves a little bit better, and it really is amazing what a difference 48 hours makes. And I think I said that a week ago, too, when I was talking about the Mariners series and how the Mets were able to rally back into that series and win it. In this instance, they've already got the series won, and they have a chance to sweep the series to completely change the complexion of their road trip, because you go to D.C. and you lose against a bad Nationals team, and then you have to square off against this Braves team who has had your number this year, who you were just up against them in that last series at Citi Field, where you won the first game and you let a series get away. So you're in this spot where you're just wondering, as a fan, are the New York Mets going to go into Atlanta, get the pants beat off of them, and continue to slide further down? But you now have a new stopper in Noel McLean. And just like in that Mariners series, McLean gets the ball rolling, and Clay Holmes follows it up with another really good start. Clay Holmes pitched into the 7th inning. That whole stat, the Mets, they hadn't had anyone get through 6 innings outside of David Peterson for 2 months. Last guy that did it was Clay Holmes on June 7th. Now, all of a sudden, they've got 2 guys who just did it. And if David Peterson goes 6, they might have 3 guys in the same series get through 6. Can you imagine that? I don't even know how to comprehend it. It's been so long since we've seen it. If we ever did see it this season, I couldn't tell you. But now you have that solid foundation when this rotation's going well, and this offense is really starting to pick it up. There was a couple big moments in this game. The first one came with Jeff McNeil in the 3rd inning. So McNeil comes up in a spot where you have Lindor and Soto in scoring position, 2 outs. Now, the way they got there, top of the 3rd, Lindor leadoff single, Juan Soto draws a walk, and then they pull off a double steal. So 23rd of the year for Lindor, 21st of the year for Soto. Got runners at 2nd and 3rd with Pete Alonso up. He grounds out. They don't score. Mark Vientos strikes out. So you're at risk of straining those 2 runners. Jeff McNeil, first pitch swinging, gets a cutter up and absolutely demolishes it. 2nd longest home run hit of his career, over 420 feet. And that puts the Mets up 3-0. Now, Clay Holmes was very good early in this game, retired the first 6 batters that he faced, but he did struggle to keep that lead the bottom of the 3rd, because he had runners on the corners with 1 out. So he was in a dicey spot. And then he got a shallow fly ball to Starling Marte, and Marte showed off the cannon. I mean, we're not used to seeing Marte in the outfield this year, but if there's one thing you miss about Marte playing out there, it is his arm. And he just delivered a perfect throw on the fly, gunned down the runner trying to tag from 3rd, and the Mets got out of that inning with an inning-ending double play. Now, 4th inning, Clay Holmes had a really tough frame there, walked the first 2 batters that he faced, got a ground ball to Jeff McNeil, and McNeil goes to 2nd with it. There was really no chance to turn 2, and Acuna was just booking it on contact, and he beats the throw to 2nd. So now Holmes has to face the bases loaded with nobody out. Marcell Ozuna hits one to the warning track, basically. That brings in the first Braves run. Then you have a little chopper. Holmes fields it off the mound, but just doesn't get a good handle of the baseball and is unable to come home at that point. So another runner scores, but he's able to get the out at first, and then he's able to finally get out of the inning with a pop-up. So he ends up holding on to the lead at 3-2, but barely. It was definitely a tough frame. What was really encouraging, though, is while he had the bad fourth inning, and we know the bad fourth inning if you've been watching the Mets closely this year, he settled in really nicely after that, retired the next 6 batters that he faced. Final out of the 6th inning came on a diving catch by Tyrone Taylor, and the Mets finally broke the game open in the 7th. You had Juan Soto get a leadoff walk. Pete Alonso hits a 2-run homer, and I don't know how that ball got out. I mean, Pete just mishit a baseball out. It's basically what happened. And I remember so many home runs from Mark Vientos when he was a prospect that were just like the home run that Pete hit, where it's a towering fly ball. They don't square it up right. It's off the end of the bat. And they're just so strong that they're able to keep it fair down the right field line and just barely hit a home run. That's what happened with Alonso's, and it was a big one. And then speaking of Vientos, he goes back-to-back with Alonso. A few batters later after Jeff McNeil pops out, Starling Marte goes yard. So 3 homers later, and the Mets are now up 7-2. With such a big lead, Carlos Mendoza sends Holmes back out there for the 7th inning. He picks up a strikeout before giving up a base hit and was then pulled for Gregory Soto, who was able to get through that 7th. Tyler Rogers pitched a scoreless 8th. Edwin Diaz closed it out because he hasn't pitched in a week, so they just had to get him some work. And the Mets were able to cruise to a series victory. But also, I didn't even mention the cherry on top in the top of the 9th inning as Mark Vientos homered again, and Jeff McNeil went back-to-back with him. So both of those guys homer. The Mets had, altogether 6 homers in the game, 4 between those two. Marte and Alonso hit theirs. Just a complete team effort in this win. Great defense across the board. The Tyrone Taylor diving catch, Jonah Marte would throw, good defense in the infield. The Mets are starting to play some good ball, and rightfully so, especially against a team that the Mets are better than. Like, the Braves might be in their head, but the Mets are a much better team than this 2025 Atlanta Braves bunch, especially when they're rolling out Joey Wentz, Cal Quantrill off the scrap heap, mind you, because Cal Quantrill was cut by the Marlins, only to be picked up by the Braves here, and Bryce Elder. I mean, that is bottom of the barrel pitching, and now it seems like the Mets have a lineup that's capable of taking advantage of bottom of the barrel pitching. I love that we're seeing Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty in the lineup every day. Part of that, I guess, is some of the injuries with Brandon Nimmo still day-to-day, and Jeff McNeil missed some, but ultimately, I think this is what we're going to see moving forward is a very healthy dose of Vientos and Beatty, and rightfully so, because they're swinging the bats really well, and for Beatty, he gives you the great defense at third base. We see him now routinely make so many awesome plays, and I love the Mets infield when you have Jeff McNeil at second. I think they should probably keep him there at this point with the shoulder concerns because you want McNeil's bat in the lineup. So I'd imagine second base is putting less strain on that shoulder. So keep him at second, keep Beatty at third. I think right now that's your best all-around infield because when you put Mauricio at third and Beatty at second, I think your defense is worse. And also, I mean, if Jeff McNeil wasn't in that lineup, your offense would be worse. If you had Acuna at second, he's not even on the roster right now. Sure, defensively you're better, but he doesn't give you anything offensively. Jeff McNeil is still the best all-around second baseman on this team, and Brett Beatty is the best all-around third baseman on this team. So when you have those two guys, I think you're in a really good spot with this starting infield. And then the DH spot's going to be in a little bit more flux because Starling Marte certainly deserves to keep playing. But with Brandon Nimmo banged up, maybe you can steal some starts and left for Marte. And Vientos obviously, going to DH along with Marte. But the way all of those guys that I've been talking about, all those guys I'm mentioning here, all of them are playing well. McNeil, Marte, Vientos, Beatty. And then when you have Francisco Lindor scorching hot atop your lineup, Juan Soto swinging the bat very well, Pete Alonso's had a strong month of August, you're doing really, really well with this team right now. And it's a deep, deep lineup. Cedric Mullins has had some good games lately as well. So this team appears to finally be touching that ceiling offensively. They got to maintain it. They got to do it against better pitching. This is, again, a series where you're facing some bad pitching, but we've seen the Mets face bad pitching in the past. How about the last series against the Nationals and not deliver? So it's good to see them have these big offensive outbursts. Hopefully they can continue because even though we're going to talk a lot about the pitching here in the next segment because we got a ton of news. Frankie Montas out for the year. So We got a lot to discuss there, and there's also more to discuss in the final segment as Jonah Tong, the Mets' top pitching prospect, is apparently in play to join this team this year. So there's a lot on the pitching front to focus on, and there's a chance that the Mets can get their rotation to be in a better place with some of the young blood coming up. The young blood, as well as Tyler McGill, could also help the bullpen. So I think the pitching can improve, but regardless of whatever's going on with the Mets when it comes to their pitching staff, I still feel like this team has to be led by their offense. The part of this team that has a chance to be special is this lineup. If Mark Vientos is the Mark Vientos from 2024, if Brett Baty is the guy that we've been seeing over the last couple of months, and then you have your star quartet of Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and Nimmo. I mean, that's 6 guys. If Alvarez comes back at 80% strength, or even hopefully better than that, that improves the catching spot. It's just a lineup that you could see going into October and competing with anybody when they're right. And so we'll see how long they stay right for, but this is definitely a good start for the Mets offensively. The question is, what's going on with the pitching? Because we got a lot of news on that front that I wanted to discuss. So we're going to get to all of it here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you want to go to a ball game with your friends or family? Maybe you're trying to get to the ballpark this week for Mets versus Phillies. It's going to be a crazy series. It's only a couple homestands left this year, so you don't want to miss out. You want to get out to Citi Field. GameTime is going to make buying your tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, so I always wait until I'm about to walk into the ballpark. That's usually when I'm getting my tickets. They got incredible deals on last-minute seats, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that'll take the worry out of buying tickets. And GameTime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game like Mets versus Phillies this week. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. I would love to get there by the end of the season, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so the big injury news of the day, Frankie Montas is out for the year with a significant UCL injury. It may require Tommy John surgery. Now, I know that Frankie Montas has long been a punching bag for this fan base, and I also know that this injury was celebrated by Mets fans today. I don't know if it was celebrated once the Tommy John part of it came out. It was first, I think, classified as a UCL sprain or UCL injury, and we didn't know the severity of it, although if there's a sprain, it means there's a tear, and there's a tear, typically it could result in TJ. But I get why fans were quick to celebrate, and we will talk about the roster implications of this year because this frees up a lot of possibilities for the Mets down the stretch. And I'm not going to lie, my head went there too, and I thought, even if this is best case scenario, a Phantom IL thing, which it clearly is not, but if you had stuck him on the injured list for, the 15 days and then you had him rehab for the rest of the year, you could just now take a pitcher that was not going to help you this season and set him off to the side for next year. But now next year's in doubt. There's a real chance that Frankie Montas will never put on a Mets jersey again. He might get released this winter as the Mets try to just grab as many 40-man roster spots as they can, something I'm going to talk about in the final segment as it relates to promoting some of the top pitching prospects right now and adding them to the 40. So I want to, before we get into the implications, I want to acknowledge and respect what a brutal break this is for Frankie Montas, who battled back from a shoulder injury that really was devastating for him. It took him years to get back to himself. Last year, he had a little semblance of pitching like himself at the end of the season with the Brewers, and it was enough for David Stearns and the Mets front office to decide that Frankie Montas was a guy that they wanted to bet on to be their next Sean Manaea or Luis Severino from 2024, where they bet on a guy off a down year and then they give you frontline production. There was a lot of hope that Montas could be the next guy for this team. It didn't work. And injuries are the reason it didn't work. We'll never know if he was completely healthy, if it would have been a good signing or not. Revisionist history, you certainly could say, oh, it's a bad signing, but it's not even worth going down that road. It sucks for him because this guy is now going to have to pretty much miss all of next year, and we'll see you in 2027 trying to resurrect your career again. It's a really rough injury for him. So I didn't want to be insensitive to that before we get into what this means for the Mets roster, which right now it means Huascar Brazaban's up, but you can dream about a lot of possibilities now because I have been banging the table for the Mets to DFA Ryan Stanek, for the Mets to option Reed Garrett so that they could have the roster spot they need to call up a Brandon Sproat. Well, now the pitcher that you'd always would have chosen to remove from the equation first, which is Frankie Montas, now he's out of the picture. And the only reason why we weren't, or why I wasn't saying DFA Montas, is because I understood that with the $17 million he was owed next season, that was just a big pill to swallow, especially when rosters are going to expand in about a week's time once you get to the end of August. Now, everything's at your disposal this week. You can do whatever you want to do, but at the moment, the Mets are not planning to call up Brandon Sproat. Anyone who's been listening to this show for the past week knows that I have been advocating for Sproat to make that start on Monday so Kodai Senga could start on his typical 5 days rest. You plug Sproat in there for that series against the Phillies, and I felt like it would make Senga better and Manaea better, as those guys would have the extra rest, and even Brandon Sproat would be pitching on extra rest. The plan, though, is to go with Kodai Senga on regular rest, Sean Manaea on regular rest, Noel McLean on regular rest against the Phillies. So here is all of the different tweets that we got, right, from Mike Puma, who was reporting on the scene in Atlanta. He was talking to Carlos Mendoza before the game, and that's where we got all this different news. So, again, the plan, according to Mike Puma, was that Kodai Senga will be starting on Monday. The first tweet he had was, I am told Brandon Sproat remains on course to pitch tomorrow for Syracuse. No plans to insert him on Monday. It will be Senga, who just finished his bullpen. Then he says, Tyler McGill built up to 65 pitches with Syracuse last night. Carlos Mendoza was non-committal when asked about McGill pitching again for Syracuse. He mentioned that the Mets are on a stretch of 16 straight games. And then he follows it up, Puma does, by saying it will be Peterson, Senga, Manaea, McLean the next 4 days, beginning on Sunday, according to Mendoza, who added the team could reevaluate the need for a sixth starter at some point thereafter. So, when you look at the Mets' plan here, and now we know what they have been thinking this whole time, and I can get my head around it. Because I actually was thinking about it last night when my head hit the pillow. I'm just wondering, like, when's Sproat going to come up? That's what I think of when I'm about to go to sleep because I'm crazy. But I had the thought maybe the idea with not promoting Sproat for Monday is because they want McLean to pitch against the Phillies. And considering that, assuming Senga and Manaea pitch well, because if you lose the first 2 games of the series and McLean pitching on 4 days rest gets rocked, it was a bad plan. But if Senga looks great on 4 days rest, and I think there's also maybe even a part of this too, where it's looking at the recent success or lack thereof from Senga and Manaea and think, you know what, maybe having him pitch on short rest might be good for them. You should get them right back on the mound. They need to build themselves up. So that could be the other part of this. But if you win one of those 2 games and Noel McLean wins you a series in the final one, and you beat the Phillies in this series, and you pick up a game in the NL East race, then the plan made sense. The only question is, how committed are you to a 5-man rotation? Are they going to go twice in 1 week with Senga on regular rest? And for him, that's irregular rest because he always gets 5 days. That's what I don't know. And that's where Brandon Sproat can still enter the picture this week. He's making a start in Syracuse today. We'll see if that happens. Assuming it does, he will not be available to make his MLB debut until Friday, and that would be the earliest possibility on 4 days rest. If we play it all out, Peterson today against the Braves, Senga, Manaea, McLean against the Phillies, all on regular rest. You then can go right back to Clay Holmes on regular rest on Thursday, David Peterson on regular rest on Friday, and then you could slide in Brandon Sproat on Saturday to pitch in front of Kodai Senga And for Sproat, that would be on 5 days rest. It would also be a much softer landing spot for him because he'd be going up against the Marlins. And I actually just saw the Marlins today. I went to the game because I live in South Florida and we had a little fan event for just baseball. So I was out there and I watched that Marlins lineup. And granted, they ended up winning in extra innings. Crazy game, but that lineup is not very good. They don't have Kyle Stowers in it. Actually, they lost in extras. I left early. I'm not a Marlins fan. I wanted to come home to watch the Mets game on time. I know it went to extras. I left in the 7th inning. I was there for the fan event. It wasn't a Mets game. Don't come at me for leaving a baseball game early. I also wanted to beat the traffic out of the ballpark. So I, again, could get home as soon as the 7:15 start for the Mets. But that Marlins team is a much softer landing spot for Brandon Sproat. So combining those two things, I can follow the Mets line of logic, and I'm okay with it. We'll see how those three guys pitch in this series against the Phillies, but if you win that series, and then you're set up to slide Sproat into the rotation against the Marlins, and you roll with a 6-man for there, I think that is one possibility. The other option, Tyler McGill could open up the series against the Marlins, as they could forego his final rehab start if they wanted to, and have him pitch on regular rest. He went on Saturday, so he could go on regular rest on Thursday and make that start for the Mets. And he wouldn't have a full arsenal. I'm sure he wouldn't be able to go 95 pitches, but he went up to 65 last time. I'm sure they could get 75 out of him. And once you get to about 75 pitches, you can get through 5 innings potentially. And so that might be the plan for the New York Mets as well. So we'll see. But one of the interesting layers of all this reporting we got on the pitching situation for the Mets is Mike Puma then sent out this tweet. He said the wind has shifted in the Mets organization in recent days regarding Jonah Tong. His name is entering the conversation for this season. He is scheduled to pitch tonight for Syracuse. He pitched for Syracuse. He was brilliant. So we're going to talk about next. Is it possible that we see Jonah Tong in a Mets uniform this season with the big league club? I'll go through that here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP or eyeing a long shot division winner, or maybe you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, you can find all that available to you over at FanDuel. You can take a flyer on someone like Jaden Daniels to win the MVP at plus 1,000. Maybe you want to see the Bills win the Super Bowl and you want to lay some money on plus 700 odds to win it all. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and get the live graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. So Jonah Tong made his second start in AAA, and once again, he did not give up a run. His first time out, he went 5 2/3 scoreless, allowed 3 hits, 2 walks, struck out 9. This time he goes the full 6 innings, allowed 5 hits, 1 walk, no runs, struck out 8. So he now has 17 strikeouts in 11 2/3 innings pitched so far. Only has 3 walks issued, only giving up 8 hits in those 11 2/3 innings. So his whip is under 1, just barely, but it is under 1. He is absolutely dominant right now. What's crazy, he's largely doing this with 2 pitches. Fastball, changeup. He touched, I think, 97, 98 on the gun with his fastball, which is crazy because last year he was sitting more 92, topping out at 94, 95. This year he's more sitting 95 or 94, 95 and topping out at 97, 98. So his improvement has been remarkable. He's 22 years old. And right now, you watch the highlights for this past start, it was just fastballs up in the zone and then the changeup. And it's such a good changeup, and it tunnels so well off of its fastball. He's just beating guys vertically, basically. He's just going up in the zone with the fastball, and then he has them thinking it's a fastball, and he has the table drop out from under it on the changeup. and they just don't know what to do with it. He has great separation and velocity between those two pitches. The movement is different, but also tunnels to the point that they just can't recognize that a changeup's coming. And then again, it just falls off the table. The thing about him coming up right now, though, maybe he can't dominate big league hitters with two pitches. But if you're going to be a starting pitcher and turn a lineup over 3 times, you need to have a breaking ball. You need to have a slider or a curveball that you can trust. And he has those pitches, slider and a curveball. They're work in progress. They'll look beautiful at times, but they don't always work for him. And sometimes he just doesn't have them. And also, he doesn't need them. So right now, he's able to just go fastball, changeup. 72 of his 88 pitches were fastballs or changeups. And I believe he threw even a greater percentage of those two pitches in his first start. I think over 90% of his pitches his first start, which is fastballs and changeups. So there's still something developmentally that he has to work on in AAA, which is those breaking balls, because that can take him to another level. In the big leagues, they're going to be able to catch up to that fastball a little bit more than they are in the minor leagues. Now, they'll still get blown away by 97 with, 20 inches of induced vertical break. I mean, they'll still that's still going to blow hitters away. Don't get me wrong, especially from his incredible, delivery. That's just so deceptive. I just don't know if it fully makes sense to just throw him into the fire as a starting pitcher. With that said, as a reliever, having him go out for a 3-inning spurt, face a lineup one time through. So you get one at bat against Jonah Tong. You're not able to time him up the second or third time through. I mean, he goes through it. You have him with, let's just say, you get 5 from Brandon Sproat. And then you go to Jonah Tong, and what if he retires the side in order 3 times in a row? And now you had your start to go 5, and all of a sudden, Jonah Tong can hand the ball to Edwin Diaz. So I'm very curious how they plan on deploying these guys, because I'd still be surprised if Jonah Tong cut the line in front of Brandon Sproat, because Sproat just has so much more AAA experience. And the difference between AAA and AA, you have more disciplined hitters. You have more hitters that are more well-prepared to capitalize on your weaknesses and try to avoid your strengths. It's just that different level of preparation that more veteran hitters are going to give you in AAA. Now, so far, Jonah Tong is dominating AAA. But it's 2 starts. I just don't know if they're really going to do it. But you got to make your decision, because if you want these guys to potentially help you in the playoffs, they have to be on the roster before the end of this month. They have to be on the 40. And that gets to the other side of this. Neither one of Jonah Tong or Brandon Sproat is Rule 5 draft eligible this winter. That means they do not have to add these guys to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. Rule 5 draft, for those of you who aren't aware, it's an opportunity for guys who are blocked in a certain organization from the big league roster while being big league ready to get selected by another team that has big league opportunities with them. And if you stay on that big league roster for the whole year, then you are part of that organization now. If you don't, then you can get passed back to your former team. Now, if you signed at 18 years or younger, I believe it's 5 years with the team. If you sign at 19 years or older, it's 4 years with the team before you are Rule 5 draft eligible. So both those guys are Rule 5 draft eligible in 2026. They do not have to be added to the roster. That's different from Dylan Ross, who I've been talking about, the Mets reliever in AAA, who throws over 100, and he's been great all season. He is Rule 5 draft eligible. He actually completed the shutout for Jonah Tong, pitched the final 2 innings, scoreless, hitless innings for Ross, who lowered his ERA to 2.49 on the season. So Ross, you got to add to the 40. Otherwise, he's going to get claimed in the Rule 5 draft. There's no doubt about that. Whether you add him now or add him in the winter, though, that is still up for debate. Brandon Sproat, I feel like he should be part of this team down the stretch. If he was in the conversation when you had Nolan McLean and you're debating between the two, I still think it makes sense to call him up first. And I do wonder what exactly that report means as far as the wind has changed, yada, yada, yada. He's in the conversation. That is a Carlos Mendoza trope. I mean, that's something that Carlos Mendoza says all the time. He has put himself into the conversation. So is that just something that he said because Jonah Tong's made a couple starts in AAA, and so now he's in the conversation? Or are they seriously considering this? I really don't know what to think, honestly, because my gut would tell me that the Mets are just going to let Jonah Tong finish out this season as the most dominant pitcher in minor league baseball, go into a healthy offseason, continue to work, and be ready to go to fight for a job in spring training. But if you really think that he helps you that much and you're trying to win a World Series this year, maybe you lean all the way into the young guns and you bring up Sproat and Tong. Now, if you do that, you are going to be in a very precarious situation when it comes to your 40-man roster this winter. You're trying to win, doesn't really matter, but I counted out just to see, and this was even with me, paring it down myself. Like, I didn't have Dom Hamill and Jonathan Pitaro both staying on the roster. I think maybe the Mets picked the one that they like more, cut the other. They could cut both this winter. I mean, there's every chance that they do. It's just 40-man casualties. I had them either non-tendering or trading Jose Siri. I had them releasing Frankie Montas. I did have them bringing back Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz. But the point is, when you go through some of those decisions I made, you add all the injured players who will come back, like a Drew Smith, like a Christian Scott. You cut all the impending free agents besides Alonso and Diaz. I got to 34 names before even adding Sproat or Tong to the roster. If you add Sproat, Tong, and Dylan Ross, and you have to add Ross again, and I'm not even sure, I haven't even done a dive into other players you might have to protect from the Rule 5 draft. Well, all of a sudden, there's 3 roster spots before you hit free agency. So that's where it might make sense to not add Jonah Tong to the 40-man roster if you don't think he's going to make starts and you believe in the guys you have in-house to fill out a playoff bullpen. Then maybe it just makes sense to stick with Brandon Sproat. But what's really fascinating about this is it's just a week now. There's a week left in August for the Mets to make these tough decisions. Because if you ultimately decide that Jonah Tong is better than Sproat and better than your other options to join your big league rotation, you got to do that now. If you think that all of these guys can help you, Sproat, Ross, and Tong, you got to add them all to the 40 and figure out your roster crunch later. It's going to be really interesting to see what the Mets do. Right now, it's a 5-man rotation. David Peterson, Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, Nolan McLean, and Clay Holmes. And I'd imagine that we maybe see all of them in that order this week, with obviously Peterson starting today. But how McGill's going to factor into this picture? When do we see Brandon Sproat? If we see Brandon Sproat, and could they really think about just going right to Jonah Tong? It leaves us with a lot to discuss over the next week here as the Mets make those decisions. The one thing I will say, Paul Blackburn got rocked for the Yankees. So I'm going to own that I was wrong on that one. I'll own it. He didn't get the start, though. I think he would be better as a starter. Fished out of the bullpen. But still, I was wrong. It worked out. You DFA'd Blackburn. Okay. No harm, no foul. But they could have called McLean up sooner. I've made the case for why it made sense not to, but they could have done that. They may not roster Brandon Sproat this year. They may not roster Jonah Tong this year. They may just decide that they want to set those guys aside for next year, call up Tyler McGill before another rehab starts, just have him make his next start with the Mets. They could have a 6-man rotation with McGill as the 6th starter, and they wouldn't have to call up any of these top prospects. So they have so many different options that they can go with here. But if this team can't finish this off and they end up on the outside looking in come October, then it's going to be very fair to criticize David Stearns for protecting these prospects a little bit too much when they could have helped the team. But if they promote Jonah Tong, you certainly can't say that he is just thinking about the future. Because if you were thinking about the future and the future alone, you'd play it safer with Jonah Tong and say, you know what, we're going to let him hopefully get challenged in AAA and get through the rest of his season. And next year, you sort of have a May ETA is the most likely one, where also you have a chance, if he doesn't win Rookie of the Year, to get that extra year of control too. To do the little service time manipulation game and wait till after whatever that date is in May that you can call him up and he won't accrue a full year of service, and then you get the extra year of control. So they can do that. I'm just going to be very curious to see what choices they make with these two pitching prospects, because they have electric stuff. I mean, these guys have the best fastballs arguably in the organization right now. I'm trying to think. I mean, like Sean and I has a really good fastball. So Edwin Diaz has a really good fastball. Obviously, there is a couple, but if you're just looking at the starting pitchers, yeah, I'd venture to say that Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong are right up there with the best fastballs the Mets have, particularly Jonah Tong. I mean, you could make the case that Jonah Tong probably has the best fastball in this organization right now. So maybe we see him. It's going to be interesting to see what the Mets do. But that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. I'll be back tomorrow breaking down any news we get on this front, recapping the final game of this series against the Braves, and previewing a big one coming up, Mets versus Phillies. So should be a fun show. Make sure you tune in. As always, thank you for tuning in. Follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Going to be Locked On Mets Insider. Find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game Night, the show that'll take you around all the action in Major League Baseball with insight from our local experts and league-wide experts that'll take you through the games. You can find Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel, as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed.